Phase 2, I can heal myself. In phase 2, you're ready to take the first steps toward responsibility in the present moment. You know you're not to blame, but in phase 2, you're working on reparenting yourself by being the loving and compassionate adult that you never had. This phase of the journey is part of your emotional healing. So in my early 20s, I worked with a number of counsellors and in support groups where people often listened to me and reflected my story back to me, and this was so helpful. I needed to tell my story, to feel it and retell it. These people were so good to me, and I will always be grateful to them for their care and support. But in my mid to late 20s, I realised that just repeating stories had stopped helping. The inside of me still felt like a war zone. So I went to London and studied counselling psychotherapy to apply the theories of psychotherapy to myself. I worked with a Jungian psychoanalyst for several years, and later I worked with a Gestalt therapist. I began to get a sense of how I might get access to my inner world in ways that could help me make progress. I gained access to my dreams, which had previously been very frightening. I did something called two-chair or empty chair work. It involved putting an empty chair in front of me in the counselling room, then imagining that in that chair was a part of myself that I was finding difficult to manage, and then that it was ready to talk to me. I would then have a discussion with this part. And it was the first time that I was introduced to the idea that my personality was not one unified thing. I came to see that I am a series of separate personality parts that are sometimes in agreement with each other and sometimes not. Since then, I've done internal family systems therapy, and I've studied it. I learned how to speak to each part of myself separately and individually, and I began to access the most traumatized parts of me. As afraid as I sometimes felt, I began to see the real possibility that I could heal myself by being in a loving relationship with myself. And so let me tell you a little more about that. And as I go on to talk about my personality parts in this next section, notice how my talking about them gives you access to your own parts too. You'll realise, oh yes, I have that part too. Or you'll say to yourself, I have that part, but it expresses itself in a completely different way. This is wonderful. It's your first sense of the healing power of working with yourself this way. So I've learned there's a self within me that's wise and calm and spacious. It feels like my essence, like my soul in some ways. This self seems to be untouchable by all of the life experiences I have ever had. It never seems afraid or overwhelmed. Now I get access to this self by slowing down, putting both my feet on the floor, bringing my attention to the contact between feet and floor, and breathing in a relaxed way. I let the contact between feet and floor slowly relax my entire body. I notice the outside world and how peaceful and calm things are here in the present moment. And there I am, in contact with myself. I feel open, safe and relaxed. You see, I want this self to do the negotiation with all of the other parts of me because this self seems to know what to do. He doesn't get frustrated or flustered or frightened. He doesn't get angry with my parts. He loves them very deeply. And now quite a few of my parts love and trust him too. There's a part of me that is my protector. He comes out only when I feel challenged. He comes out when I'm frightened or embarrassed or when I feel threatened. At his most extreme, he is super angry. He drops an atomic bomb around him and destroys everything and everyone in his path. In the past, the problem with this part was that he damaged almost all of the relationships in my life, even with the people I love most in the world. In therapy, I traced him all the way back to when I was 7 years old. Through empty chair work and through internal family systems work, I finally found him inside me, and I worked to develop a loving relationship with him. Now he tells me when he sees or feels that something isn't right around me in the social interactions that I'm in. I've learnt that I can trust him, that he has lots of good wisdom that I can draw on. His burden is great, and so I have to take fairly continuous care of him. But he deserves that, given that he's taken such good care of me for so long. I've been able to bring him into the present moment with me, and he in turn has learnt to protect me in more loving and helpful ways. Do you have a part like this inside you? Can you feel it? Good. There's another part of me that at his most extreme is about 9 years old. That part of me, when I return to him, often takes me back to an orphanage I was in when I was 9 years old. I'd been taken away as usual when my mother was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, but this time, when she came out of the hospital, she didn't come back to collect me. And I withdrew into fantasy. This part of me is an escape artist. He will rush off into hedonism, into addictions, into anything that feels really good but isn't actually good for me in the long term. He's also the reason why I have so many degrees. He's always dreaming and grasping at new projects so he can feel legitimate and so he can belong to something. I've learned to be the adult that he needs. I've learned to talk to him. And now we have a relationship where I soothe him in new ways. For example, he loves reading, so we read together, usually in the evenings in soft light. He loves having stories told to him, so we listen to podcasts and audiobooks together. He loves holding my partner's hand, so we do that together often. I've learned that if I spend time with him, that's all he needs to feel safe and loved and not so alone. So you can see from this story how getting healing access to myself was all about learning not to kick these traumatized parts away from me like my parents did. For years, I thought that denying my traumatized self was the only way to be better and achieve success. Is that how you feel too? Well, now I know that letting these exiles out of the basement inside me is the way to heal. I know they don't want to hurt me, even when some of them feel very extreme. I say, you're welcome. I love you. You belong to me because you are a part of me. And so I listen to them. I ask them what they need, and then I follow their guidance. I give them what they ask for. Now here's the miracle. After a while of doing this, as crazy as it might seem, right? I realized that my mind had stopped feeling like a war zone. My inner world started to feel like a place I wanted to be, like a healthy family. And now I have this sense of love inside me. I love to turn inward, and I love to take care of myself. You know, I suspect that people who grow up in healthier families reach adulthood and have the capacity to do this for themselves already. They can self-soothe, they can be with themselves easily. Those of us who did not grow up in healthy families need to teach ourselves how to do this work in our adult lives. Are you ready? Okay, so now let's turn to you.